Hello there, everyone. If you're watching this video, then you are part of the TTOR army, an army that is building itself up one subscriber at a time. I'm recording this video late at night, but as you can see from the title and thumbnail of today's video, today we're going to be returning to an old series that I did years ago on alt text sites like BitChute, which is debunking King James Onlyist objections. And in today's video, we're going to be debunking the King James Onlyist objection regarding Isaiah 7:14. Now, how did this even come up? Well, last weekend I did a live stream on the Proverbs Guy Ministries network that you can see right here on screen called TTOR, Truth, the Objective Reality. And the title of it was that I was defending New Age Bible versions. I also restreamed onto Rumble where you can see the official title, and I will have the link to both versions of this live stream in the description box below. But regardless of whether you watched it live on YouTube or whether you watched it live on my Rumble channel, I had an exchange with a King James Onlyist who called himself Mr. Wayne, and he is the one who brought up the Isaiah 7:14 objection. He claimed that Isaiah 7:14 in modern English translations of the Bible translated the Hebrew word almah as young woman instead of virgin, and that these new versions were therefore attacking the doctrine of Jesus' virgin birth. I, of course, thought this was nonsense, and I proceeded to look at the different versions of the Bible that we have. For example, King James Version reads for Isaiah 7:14, "Therefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel." Then I noticed the NIV version of that verse says, "Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and will call him Emmanuel." I noticed that in footnote B for Isaiah 7:14 it says, "or young woman." Then we see the ESV version of Isaiah 7:14, which says, "Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel." You go to the New King James Version of Isaiah 7:14, and it says, "Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel." And then you go to the NASB version of Isaiah 7:14, which says, "Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and she will name him Emmanuel." So the King James Version and the most popular modern English translations of the Bible translate the Hebrew word almah as virgin. So I thought at this point that the King James Onlyist I was talking to was just making this up. But then I did a little more research, and I discovered that there are indeed some English translations of the Bible, albeit the less popular ones, that do translate the Hebrew word almah as young woman instead of virgin. Now here's two examples in particular. The Revised Standard Version of Isaiah 7:14 says, "Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, a young woman shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel." And in the footnote, for 7:14a, it says, "or virgin." And then there's the Good News Translation, or the Good News Bible, which says for Isaiah 7:14, "Well then, the Lord himself will give you a sign. A young woman who is pregnant will have a son, and will name him Emmanuel." Obviously, there are some modern English translations of the Bible that translate the Hebrew word almah as young woman instead of virgin, like the King James does, and like the New King James does, and the NASB does, and the ESV, and the NIV, and those other modern English versions do. So why is this the case? Is this really a problem? Well, I did more research into the issue, and I discovered that both a young woman and virgin are correct translations of the Hebrew word almah. So I found an article on Catholicanswers.com or Catholic.com titled, Does the Bible Prophecy Say That the Mother of the Messiah Would Be a Virgin or Only a Young Girl? And this is the answer that they gave. The controversy surrounds the translation of Isaiah 7:14. Therefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. This Old Testament prophecy is quoted in the Gospel of Matthew, Matthew 1:23, and specifically applied to the virginal conception of Christ. Christians have always cherished this prophecy of Isaiah and its miraculous fulfillment in the virgin birth of Jesus the Messiah. Likewise, non-believers have attacked this prophecy in an attempt to discredit Christ and his church. The attack is a weak one that is easily refuted. The Hebrew word translated as virgin, almah, can also be translated as young woman, but as Strong's Hebrew lexicon notes, there is no instance where it can be proved that almah designates a young woman who is not a virgin. Additional evidence that the correct translation is virgin is supplied by the Septuagint version of the Bible, a Greek translation of the Old Testament made several centuries before Christ. It was translated by Jewish scholars for use by Greek-speaking Jews, mainly in Alexandria. The Septuagint translates the Hebrew word almah into Greek as parthenos. This Greek term has the precise meaning of virgin. So, several centuries before the birth of Christ, before there was any reason to attack his church, the meaning of Isaiah 7:14 was clear. Almah equals parthenos equals virgin. So, after reading this article, it becomes perfectly clear that even if the Hebrew word almah is translated as young woman, it clearly was referring to a virgin, because when the Jews who understood Hebrew translated the Old Testament into Greek, also known as the Greek Septuagint, they translated the word almah into the Greek word parthenos, which can only mean virgin. So clearly the Jews understood that Isaiah 7:14 was saying that the coming Messiah would be born to a virgin. Now, it is true that a young woman does not necessitate a virgin, because a young woman's a young woman and you don't have to be a virgin to be a young woman. But in the time of the Jews, back in the time of Isaiah, back in the time of Jesus, when they used the term almah to translate it as young woman, they understood generally that the young woman was a virgin. How do we know this? Well, there's further evidence in Strong's Hebrew Dictionary. I'm going to go ahead and do a quick little search. Look up 5959. All right, there we go. And in 5959, which is on page 543, we see the Hebrew word almah, which is the feminine of 5958, which is elim. And it says, alas, as veiled or private. But then we see damsel, maid, virgin. So, damsel and maids generally were young women, but it also says virgin. So, virgin is a legitimate translation of the Hebrew word almah. So, when we look at the Revised Standard Version translating almah as a young woman, and we see the Good News Bible translating the word almah as a young woman, technically, they are not wrong. The word almah can be translated both as young woman and as virgin. And the Jews back then understood a young woman, generally speaking, was a virgin. But as far as the King James Onlyist objection that the word almah being translated into young woman in the Good News Bible and the RSV Bible, that this is an attack on the virgin birth of Jesus, they are easily refuted by one verse, Matthew 1:24 through 25. In the Good News translation, the Good News Bible version of Matthew 1:24 through 25, it says, So when Joseph woke up, he married Mary, as the angel of the Lord had told him to, but he had no sexual relations with her before she gave birth to her son, and Joseph named him Jesus. So according to Matthew 1:24 through 25, in the Good News Bible, Joseph did not have sex with Mary before she gave birth to Jesus. In other words, the Good News Bible is affirming the virgin birth of Jesus. And furthermore, you go to the RSV version of Matthew 1:24 through 25, and it says, "When Joseph woke from sleep, he did as the angel of the Lord commanded him. He took his wife. But he knew her not until she had borne a son, and he called his name Jesus." Now it says that Joseph knew her not until she gave birth to Jesus. Now I'm sure those of you who are older have heard of the phrase knowing someone biblically. That means having sex with them. So when the Bible here says that Joseph did not know Mary until she bore Jesus to him, that means he did not have sex with Mary until after Jesus was born. So the Good News Bible and the RSV Bibles, despite translating Alma as young woman in Isaiah 7:14 in each of their respective texts, which King James Onlyists say is an attack on the virgin birth of Jesus, both versions of those Bibles say that Joseph did not have sex with Mary until after Jesus was born, which means that the doctrine of Jesus' virgin birth is being affirmed by these versions of the Bible. Now, I don't read the RSV Bible and the Good News Bible on any kind of basis at all. I primarily read the NIV, and I do a little bit of reading in the King James Version, and I do a little bit of reading, at least I have in the past, in the ESV version. But by and large, I don't read the other translations of the Bible. My only exposure to the Good News Bible is that my favorite Christian film, The Gospel of John, bases itself on the text of the Good News Bible version of the Gospel of John. And I actually sat down with the NIV version of the Gospel of John and read it alongside the movie, and I found that the Good News Bible version of the Gospel of John and the NIV version of the Gospel of John really don't differ from each other in terms of the message and what they're saying. It's just difference of words used to communicate. Well, guys, that's all I have for you. As you can see from this video, King James Onlyists, once again, are out to lunch. They are specifically out to lunch when they claim that the Good News Bible and the RSV Bibles translating the word almah as young woman in Isaiah 7:14 is an attack on the doctrine of Jesus' virgin birth. Because one, the Hebrew word almah can be translated as both young woman and virgin, and the Jews at the time generally assumed that young women were virgins, which is why they translated the word alma into the Greek word for virgin in the Greek Septuagint. And two, when you look at Matthew 1:24 through 25 in the Good News Bible and the RSV Bible, they both affirm the virgin birth of Jesus. So when you see King James Onlyists telling you that Isaiah 7:14 and the Good News Bible and the RSV Bible are attacking the doctrine of Jesus' virgin birth, you can know that they are straight up wrong and they are out to lunch on this.